Segment 2, Gold and Black Live, our annual appearance of I don't know, you're a guru of sort. Yeah, I like that up there. You look good.
Well, I'm trying. I can't grow it on my head, so I try to grow it right here.
I couldn't grow it anywhere. I think, what is this? This is supposed to be a no-shave November for cancer, and if I did that, it would be an embarrassment to mankind. So Brian Cardinal, welcome to the show. Brian Newbert, I'm glad you're still here.
I
Brian.
had to prop my chair up here.
I know. I like
feeling
these
like
guys.
I'm 5 years old here.
I'm
Well,
these,
you tall
well, yeah,
people.
but how
We're gonna have
about,
Isaac
what
Haas
if you
on
were
here someday.
5'9"?
Oh,
Not
man.
6'8". So that's
What?
I'm 5'9". You're at least.
You're that tall? Are you? Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Barely that tall. Brian, welcome to the show, and lots to talk about. Obviously, a student of basketball, and we've been watching a transformation, at least what appears to be a transformation in men's basketball, at least early going there. At least you've seen some good things, and when able to watch practice, what have you been able to glean from Matt Painter's squad so far this fall?
Well, it's, I think it's a completely different team from last year. Obviously, we've had some, graduations, some people have left, but I think, I think one of the things that you found from last game, and also by watching some practice, the team just gets along. They have a lot of fun together. They go out there, they play hard, and I think they all want to get the program back to an elite level, and I think that's exciting. I think that's going to be, fun to watch, fun to be around them as they grow and mature. But it's a good group of guys.
Have you ever seen anybody as big as Isaac Haas?
Oh man!
In the
my
league,
man,
there are
Isaac.
guys in the league that are that big, but not
but
many.
He's massive. I mean, I went to shake his hand, several months back, and his hand just engulfed mine. And
He kind of twists the knife too. He knows it, and he'll.
he's massive. He's strong, and he's a talented player. He's a good little player.
Yeah, the thing I like about him is his footwork. But he reminds me, from an enthusiasm standpoint, almost a naive enthusiasm standpoint of a young Brian Cardinal, in terms of just that almost gushing type of I'm going to play and have fun no matter what. That's a good attribute to have.
Yeah, it is, and I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, Isaac is just a big kid, and he's 7'2" and 300-something pounds, but he loves to play. He loves to learn. He's asking coaches questions. He's talking to AJ. He is just really just excited to be out there, and that's fun. I think that enthusiasm spreads throughout the team, and I think that's one of the reasons why you watch the games and you see them having fun.
Yeah, Brian, you had an interesting theory just on AJ's makeup in terms of why he gets along with a guy like Isaac Haas, in terms of what those two seem to feed off each other so far in practice.
Yeah, something Hammond said in the summer really kind of stuck with me. He said, "I don't want to let Isaac down. I think he's really taken some personal responsibility for I don't think Isaac Haas can ever look up to anybody in a physical sense, but
right.
I think it is important to Haas to have an older player there who's helping him every day in practice, and I think that's something AJ Hammond has really taken to heart, and it's almost kind of changed him. I think he really enjoys these freshmen. I think he really enjoys the role of helping Isaac Haas along, and I think that's made a big difference in just the way he approaches the game, and just a big difference in the A.J. Hammonds you see every day in practice and in games.
And I think that's where you see the progression of our team. I think that's where you see the progression of our guys. They care for each other. A.J. understands that he's a mentor, and Isaac understands that he's someone. A.J.'s talented, and if Isaac wants to get to a certain level, he can learn, he can watch, he can get things figured out under his tutelage.
Mm-hmm. We have some pictures from our archives, because Brian had a little more hair there up there. There's Jerron Cornell, Greg McQuay, and I think that might have been in Albuquerque there, and the win maybe over Gonzaga, I want to say. Tom Campbell's images from there. But Brian, we had a question about the from a fan talking about, and you've shown this because in these alumni games you go and you mix it up, and we get pictures of you diving on the floor. Do you have how much do you miss playing in terms of that? And was that a hard transition for you to have to give it up a couple of years ago?
Oh yeah, I tell people that I only miss it when I'm awake. And playing hoops, I counted it back and counted it up, and I had played for 21 years. 12 in the NBA, 4 in high school, 5 at Purdue, and it's hard. You go to sleep on a Sunday and you wake up on a Monday and you realize that you're not going to play.
Yeah.
And but the great thing about it is to be able to transition from that to my time here at Purdue has been fantastic. But yeah, I definitely miss it. You know, I'd love to have played a 13th year, but when's enough enough?
Yeah.
You know, 12 years was incredible ride, winning the championship, and being able to come back here and be a part of things here has been great.
Yeah, marriage and children, you know, that's a good thing too.
Oh yeah, shoot. Yeah, I mean, life is wonderful. Danielle's great. Our 3 kids are fantastic. My son turns 8 here on the 13th, and daughter's 6 and 4. So life is good.
And my daughter is turning 18 on the 13th, so there we go. That's a big day. Another question for Brian: what is indeed the biggest difficulty when playing on the road in the Big Ten? What do you have to overcome, and what will this team have to in terms of making that transition to being good on the road?
Well, I think routines. I think routines play a critical role in a team's success. I think you know, they're a young team, so they're going to have to figure out some of these routines. Whether, you know, what time you wake up, what you eat, you know, how do you spend your time prior to the game, and that helps with the whole focus. And I think when you're on the road, you need to focus. It's you know, the Big Ten, some of the best teams in the country, the best conference in the country, I think, and to be able to limit some of those outside distractions is critical to the success of a team, I think.
Brian Newbert, I want to ask on kind of evaluating the guard play. We've talked about the ability to get the ball in the post, and Isaac Haas looked great last week, just being able to catch the ball and lay it in. I'll start with Brian Newbert and go to Brian Cardinal on the play of P.J. Thompson as a true freshman comes in, and again, you've warned us all not to overstep our bounds on taking too much in these exhibition games. But from what you've seen, evaluate the three guys that you see. I guess I'm saying Bryson Scott, John Octius, and P.J. Thompson in terms of what they bring.
Yeah, what you've seen is not only guys who are good passers and pretty savvy for their age in terms of getting the ball in the post, but you've also seen guys who came in and embraced that right away. They understand job one on offense for Purdue is to get the ball inside, and you can tell it's their first priority. Last year and the year before that, it clearly was not people's first priority. Not to you know, throw anybody under the bus, but this looks like, you know, based on practice scrimmages in the first exhibition game, like a group who has really embraced what Purdue has to do offensively in order to have success. Really embraced what their coaches really want them to do, and that's sort of job one in terms of getting offensively where they want to be.
Yeah. Your playing days were interesting though, because you had a Carson Cunningham who will be here tonight, an eclectic dude of sorts, as we always say. But a guy, you had guys, and there were times in your career where you had to work out the kinks to get that type of Gene Katie ball movement and things that you've had, but had to be successful. But what do you see from these guys, these young guys so far, in terms of what's impressed you?
Well, I think these guys, they all want to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. And, you know, I think they're smart guys, smart kids, and they understand, you know, the issues that we've had at the last several years. And, you know, to your point, you know, they understand that they need to get the ball inside. That's got to be the number one option. And in the years past, I think it might have been, I don't know if it was in the top 10 for some people. But the reality is those guys are smart, savvy guys. They understand for us to succeed and for them to succeed, they need to get A.J. involved. They need to get Isaac involved. Because I think once you establish that inside game, that opens up things for Dakota, things for Kendall. And I think it just makes the game a lot simpler, and they understand that.
Now, knowing your affinity to Purdue, I can't imagine. I think I know the answer before I ask it. But could you have been one of those fifth-year guys like John Octius, being able to make that transition and go someplace totally different? I mean, that takes a different type of person to be able to adjust.
Yeah, it takes a different person to be able to do that, which I think is a good thing. I think having him here obviously helps our program tremendously. I think you know, him making that adjustment, making that change. I think he's here because he wants to win. You know, he has no other illusions about it. He wants to win and wants to be successful, or else, you know, he would have just, you know, graduated and kind of figured out what he was going to do with the rest of his basketball career. But, you know, I think it's great to have him here. I think I think he has some leadership attributes that we need as a team. So I'm excited that he's involved.
What have you seen in the Octius factor? I mean, talking about that, just having age on this
Yeah.
team is important.
Yeah, I suppose my initial impression of Octi is just from what I've seen practice, scrimmages, the first exhibition, the one word that comes to mind is solid. He's just solid, and that's what you expect from a 23-year-old who has as much experience as he does. One thing Matt Painter really likes when looking at him biographically is that he hasn't turned the ball over a lot in his career, and he seems like a pretty good decision maker. He seems initially like a guy who doesn't try to do anything outside of his comfort zone. I don't know if he's going to be jacking a lot of threes. I don't know if he's going to try to make a lot of plays that aren't there to be made. But I think more often than not, based on what we've seen so far, he's going to make the right decision 9 times out of 10. And that's one of the biggest things for Purdue this year is just make the right decision. I don't want to sound like Painter, but just make the play that is there to be made. And the last couple teams just didn't do that. I did want to tack one sentence onto my last answer about post entries. That was not all the supporting cast's fault last year, the difficulties they've had. I think A.J. Hammonds will be the first one to tell you he has to be better. He has to be more aware. He has to play with more energy. And he just has to try harder in terms of getting the ball and making the right decision with it from there. So all of Purdue's problems with the post game haven't all been on the guards. A big part of it's been on Hammonds. He has to be better. He knows that, and I think he will be better.
We got a lot of good questions for Brian here on what was the first gift you bought when you signed your first, if you care to share, on first big NBA contract. You're not a real. I wouldn't say you're not a money guy, but you're a guy that when you realized, boy, you've signed a good sized NBA contract. How did you treat yourself? What did you?
Oh goodness.
Bought a farm.
Yeah, it's possible. I think I bought a vehicle. I bought a car. Probably a meal. I don't think there was anything incredible. I wish I had a sexier answer for you, but I think it was pretty basics.
Do you ever get the itch to get back into coaching, or get into coaching? You've never really been in coaching per se. I mean,
yeah. Right now where I'm at in my life, I'm enjoying things. Having a chance to be around my kids is incredible. Coaching is such a massive commitment, and I won't say I'll never do it, but right now I'm enjoying working for the John Purdue Club. I'm enjoying my time back at Purdue. I'm enjoying my family, and it's been off the charts.
Speaking of former Purdue players and coaching, what do you think Carson's like as a head coach? I mean, you played with him, so you're aware of all the complexities of that person.
Yeah, Carson, he's a unique guy. He's a great guy, and someone that we have a lot of great memories together. I look forward to seeing what he's like, walking up and down the sidelines. I spent some time with him today at their shoot-around and had a chance to talk to him and the team, and he's still as quirky as ever. He's got a play that he's got a play called Salamander. And he made the comment, where do they come up with these names? And I said, well, it's your play. I mean, you obviously came up with Salamander. But he's a great guy. He's very knowledgeable of the game, and he has a unique approach. And I think that approach has done him well. And to see his players talk to him, respond to him, just in the hour-long shoot-around was fun to see.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because he and his head coach Gene Cady had they had some good debates from time to time, and yet I'm always impressed with Carson because he's a fundamentally different person than Coach Cady. But now he's coaching, and now he's having to do it the other way. But I think he might be a good 21st century guy. I think he has the ability to empathize with his players. You buy that notion?
I do. I mean, Carson's great. He's a PhD.
Yeah.
MBA. He's written 3 books, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy is, obviously awfully smart, and the way he's able to relate to players, I think is important, and I think it's a different way, but I think it can be absolutely a successful way.
Yeah, Brian had a really nice Brian Newbert Q&A on the site. If you haven't had a chance to read it from yesterday, when Brian had spent some time with him, I'll ask both of you on this. Future, we've obviously talked about this for a couple of years. Future NBA players on this team, we'll start with A.J. Hammond. It's just an evaluation of, you've played with guys at that level. He has miles to go. We all get that. But what does he have to do to really be a guy at the next level, in your view?
Well, man, that's a tough question. He has the talent. I think he's capable of playing at that next level. I think he needs to show it on a night in, night out basis. I think, and I think to be able to survive, I think, Painter had a good quote, last year or the year before. He says, "I'm not coaching him to make the NBA. I'm coaching him to stay in the NBA."
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people can get there on their talent, but the work ethic, the things that that he needs to understand and get better. I think if he's able to do that, I think he'll have a long career. I think he's a talented enough player to be able to do that.
Is it as simple as 10 rebounds a game, as Matt Painter has said? He needs to get to that level, and then he might be ready to make the jump. I mean, should it be just that?
I think so much more goes into it. I'm sure Brian would be
Yeah.
aware. It isn't just about college productivity. It's about how prepared you are away from the floor for all that travel, for all the work that goes into it. What guys, it seems to me, and you'd know better than me, but it seems to me like sometimes when guys get to the NBA, they don't always realize the hard part is just beginning, because it's an entirely different game. It's an entirely different work ethic that's needed. In college, a lot of the time, you can be the most talented guy on the floor, and you could be really productive. In the NBA, you're surrounded by guys just as good as you, if not better, and you really have to work to set yourself apart.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, to the 10 rebound comment, I think it's a matter of, being angry enough to want to go out and get 10 rebounds and having that mentality. Mm-hmm. And then also being able to take a step back and say, you know what, I did, I only got 7, and not being happy that you only got 7. There's a mindset that a lot of players have to be able to survive in the NBA that you need. You need to have a mindset of, you're always willing to work, you're always willing to accept the challenge. And and I'm hoping that he can get to that level, because if he can, then Purdue will be very, very good.
It is actually really interesting in the NBA, because when you look at a lot of the guys playing in the league, it isn't all guys from Duke, Carolina, et cetera. There are a lot of guys from pretty marginal programs, a lot of even small schools where you just find the right fit, what have you. You can be successful. So something obviously is setting those guys apart. It isn't just the college productivity. It isn't just the biggest name. It isn't just the college pedigree. There are some certain intangibles, whether it be fit with their teams, whether it be the work ethic, whether it be the maturity, whatever, that allows guys to be successful. So I think it's different for everybody.
And for you, Brian, just in your situation in the squads that you played for, you don't have to mention anybody specifically, but did you ever, of any of your experiences with different NBA teams, walk into it saying, I know this is not as good a fit as I would like it to be, and I need to do, was that the situation, or did you go into situations where you felt like this was going to be a good fit for me?
Well, it's, when I was drafted, whether I liked the fit or not, that was the fit that I was in. I still remember going into the office between my second and third year, or my third and fourth year, and Larry Brown was the coach in Detroit. Mm-hmm. And I was in Detroit my first 2 years, Washington my next, and I was just kind of in limbo between my third and fourth. And I remember going in there and working out with those guys, and him bringing me into the office and looking at the depth chart of all the teams, and looking through each team and looking at Golden State and saying, this is a place that there's a need for you. And ultimately, my agent Mark Bartelstein was able to get me invited to camp. But it was a great situation for me. So that's one scenario. Another is just guys need to be realistic about their game. I think people need to be able to take a step back and realize that for me particularly, I wasn't a great dribbler, so I'm not going to dribble the ball up and down the court. I'm not a great post-up guy. So you have to figure out what your niche is. And then you have to work and create and do those things. And you have to appreciate who you are as a player. I think a lot of people try to be somebody they're not, and that's where I think a lot of people get themselves in trouble.
That was an interesting point you made about guys need to be realistic about their game. I like to use the term self-aware. From what you've seen of Purdue basketball this year, do you see a lot of guys who are self-aware?
Well, I do. I do see a lot of guys that are self-aware because of the position that the program is in. We're not, the last couple of years we've struggled, mm-hmm. and I think we have a good group of guys that are in there now, listening to Coach Painter. I think Coach Painter and his staff are great. I think Coach Painter is one of the best coaches in the country. And I think he now has a group of guys in there that are willing to listen, willing to check their egos at the door, willing to do whatever they can to be successful.
Yeah.
And, it's not a hard game to play, but, if you're not going to listen to people, if you're not going to do it the right way, it makes it pretty difficult.
Time for a couple more questions, because we told Brian we'd get him back to work here before long, that we'd like to spend the rest of the day with him. But Jaron Cornell was somebody that asked about, really a terrific talent, and we all remember it would have been your sophomore year, I believe, the injury against Indiana and the ankle, and yet he went on and played well after that. May have never quite been the same. How good was he early on in terms of shooting the basketball? A very special player that a lot of people may not remember, but 16 years ago he was really something else.
Oh, he was awfully talented. And the fact that he could make just shots was awesome. But being a lefty, it just kind of adds something neat to your game, and it takes people off guard. Everybody knows that he's a left-handed guy, but it's hard to get him to go right because, or it's hard to keep him from going left just because it's mentally you have to think about it, and some guys struggle with that. But Jaron was great, talented guy. Obviously the ankle injury hurt that year, which was tough because we were awfully talented. We were fun group of guys, and I know that that was difficult for him, probably more than anybody. Not just getting hurt.
Compare Jaron at that stage to what you saw last year from Kendall. Any
Yeah.
comparisons there?
Yeah, I think some similarities. I think Jaron, he was obviously a little bit bigger, a little meatier. I think Kendall's a talented player, but I think there was times last year where he'd shoot a three and he'd be right on the three-point line, and then somebody would get up on him and he would take 2 steps back and he would shoot a farther out three, and then somebody would get on him and he'd take a couple more steps back and he'd shoot a little bit farther out. Jaron, if my memory serves me, Jaron would shoot the three, and if it wasn't there, then he would dribble in there and take a couple pull-up jumpers, but they're both awfully talented players, awfully good shooters, and we need Kendall to have a great year for us.
All right, one more good question, and not to open up a whole can of worms, but IU basketball, and not just because it's Indiana, but just some of the difficulties and the challenges that not only Tom Crean's program is going through right now, just with some of the off-court issues. How real is that? I mean, that's something that that not only it can happen anywhere. It's happening in Indiana right now. How do you deal with something like that?
Well, it's tough, because there's a lot of questions out there. People want to understand what's going on, and I know just as much as I read.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of tough to comment on it, but I will say, it's coaching young kids is hard. But at the same time, and I think successful programs are able to get things in place. Have a certain expectation, and I hope the young man gets back healthy. I hope they get their things figured out, but ultimately, you got to have expectations. You got to have guys that are wanting to come in there and win and do things the right way, and it's just an unfortunate situation.
Last question. You're a study. Obviously, you're a grand old man, so to speak, but you've been around long enough to see a lot of different coaches and a lot of different teams in all sports. Daryl Hazel, as they produce, we talked in the first segment, has made some strides this year. Has a chance to maybe make some big strides in the last 3 weeks. But in terms of just watching a team prepare and a coaching staff prepare, what's impressed you about Coach Daryl Hazel and his staff?
Well, he works. He's a tireless worker. I'm excited to see him have some success this year. Obviously, because he's critical to the John Purdue Club. He's critical to Purdue athletics. But it's been fun because I know the amount of time and effort he puts into preparing for every practice, for every game, for every season. And so it's been fun to see them win some games. It's been fun to see them in some games. But ultimately, and he knows it, and he'd admit it, and everybody else would agree. We gotta win some of these close games. And this is an exciting game this weekend. I know we have a variety of guys injured and banged up, which is unfortunate. But it's been fun to be competitive. It's been fun to be able to look out there or to nudge your buddy and say that was an unbelievable touchdown. But he's a talented coach. He's a great coach. I've gotten to know him and a lot of the guys on the staff. And it's exciting to see when they came in and the struggles that we had early on to see where we are now. I think we've made tremendous strides, but we still have strides to go. And ultimately, I think he's going to continue to do well for us.
All right, well, Brian Cardinal, and one of the great faces of Purdue athletics in a new role, obviously, John Purdue Club makes the rounds. But one thing, in closing, just the fact that when you come to a men's basketball game and a women's basketball game, and Brian Cardinal's just hanging out, he's got the ability to stand up on the up in the upper level and just let people come to him, and that is worth a lot because people get a big thrill out of doing that. So, hey, thank you so much for your time today.
I appreciate it.
We'll do it
Thanks,
again
sir.
soon,
Appreciate it.
and we'll be back for our final segment, a short one at that, but with Brian Newbert, we'll talk recruiting and a little men's basketball as well. Stay tuned for the final segment of Gold and Black Live.